Welcome back. This is News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. Thank you, Jazakla, so much for staying with us, helping your company till 9 o'clock this evening. Now, MK Party Deputy President Dr Hlophe has been interdicted from taking part in any Judicial Service Commission activities pending a review of the National Assembly's decision to designate him to the body. Now, today, the Western Cape High Court handed down its judgment in an application from the DA and NGOs Freedom Under Law and Corruption Watch for his recusal from the JSC. Now, one organization that has been watching these events quite closely is Judges Matter. And joining me now on Zoom, I'd like to welcome Mbekezeli. Benjamin Mbekezeli, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you very much, Faraz. It's a pleasure to be on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Mbekezeli, just your initial reaction to the Western Cape High Court's decision.
Well, we welcome the decision. We think that it is correct that the court, for now, said that Dr. Hlophe should not participate in the JSC, while the question of his eligibility will still be determined at a later stage. You'll recall, Faraz, that before even the National Assembly took the decision to put Dr. Hlophe forward as one of the members of the JSC, we as Judges Matter came out quite strongly to say the National Assembly must choose the most ethical people to be members of the JSC who will enhance the credibility of the judiciary. And unfortunately, the National Assembly decided against our recommendations. And so it is great to see that the courts are stepping in to say to Parliament, wait, let's pause for now. Let's answer the question of whether the person you put forward is correct to be on the JSC and whether you've exercised the powers correctly. And we think that is important.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to, of course, how this all started, he was removed from the bench back in March after a disciplinary process which spanned almost 16 years. This was attempts to sway the constitutional judges in favor of Jacob Zuma in cases related to the arms deal corruption charges against the former president. And of course, I think the country knows the seriousness of the current ongoing arms deal cases. So one looked at it, one looked at the way, of course, and when this judgment was handed down in terms of what he had done in trying to sway the constitutional court judges. I mean, these are serious offenses, aren't they, Mbekezeli? And when we talk about the judiciary, this is one where the judiciary has to be kept under such a tight microscope.
Absolutely, Faraz. The judiciary should really be looked at with some vigilance because of how important it is for our constitutional democracy. And the findings that are against Dr. Hlophe are quite serious, right? It is the highest form of misconduct that a judge can commit. And he was found guilty of that misconduct. And subsequently, he was removed from office as a judge. And so even at that stage, he was found to be unethical, and already that puts a question of whether he can actually be able to assess the ethics of other people who want to be judges in the different courts. It really makes a mockery of the entire JSC process to have such a person who's been found guilty himself of being unethical, and then he goes on to select to question the ethics of other people. So that is also one of the big questions that the courts will need to answer in this, whether the Parliament really applied its mind properly when it decided to designate Dr. Hlophe as one of the members of its representatives on the JSC.
For any of the viewers that are probably not as legally inclined as you are, Mbekezeli, who probably don't understand the importance on the Judicial Service Commission, maybe give an idea of its importance, especially when we've just spoke about now the importance of the judiciary of the country, thus being one of the most important arms of the state, that the JSC really does serve in selecting the new batch of judges and legal minds to take this country forward.
Absolutely, Faraz. The JSC is a vitally important institution in our country. Its primary responsibilities is, number one, to appoint judges or to select judges for appointment. Secondly, it's to discipline judges when they don't follow the code of conduct. In the first responsibility, which is selecting judges, the JSC nominates or recommends people to the president for appointment. And in every single appointment of a judge, below those of the Constitutional Court, the president must carry out the recommendation of the JSC. He does not have a choice. That means that if you are a member of the High Court or of the Supreme Court of Appeal, once the JSC says that Faraz must be a judge, the president has no say and has to appoint Faraz. And so the powers that the JSC exercises are quite crucial because it actually determines who becomes a judge in our court. And as you know, judges have huge power over the lives of our government, the lives of ordinary South Africans. They can determine whether or not you have a house today, whether you have a car or a business, and they can even determine your liberty, whether you can be a free person or you are in jail. And so the decisions by the courts affect all of us, and which is why we must make sure that the systems to appoint judges and to hold them to high scrutiny, they themselves are credible and have the most ethical people within them.
Mbekezeli, one of the arguments the DA Freedom Under Law and Corruption Watch argued was that the National Assembly had failed to exercise its discretion in terms of Section 178H of the Constitution when it appointed Hlophe to this body. Now, of course, he was impeached. One is trying to understand how the National Assembly potentially just missed this, because in an impeachment, and if we are looking at the Constitution, this was quite a blunder from the National Assembly, wasn't it? And of course, there has to be a question mark as to how they just allowed this to happen, for even it to get to this stage right here.
Yes, I think it's important to start with what Section 165H says. What it says is that Parliament must take any reasonable measure, whether it is legislative or in its decision-making. It must take all measures to protect the independence, the effectiveness and dignity of the judiciary. And so when Parliament decides on who becomes a member of the Judicial Service Commission or a member of the Magistrates Commission, the Parliament must take a decision that will protect and enhance the independence and dignity of the judiciary. And this time around, what the DA is saying is that in making that decision, Parliament did not act rationally. It did not take a decision that is in line with Section 165, which is to protect the independence and effectiveness of the judiciary. In fact, what they say is that by designating someone who was found guilty of misconduct and who was impeached, actually Parliament violates Section 165. It goes against what Section 165 says, and it does not enhance the dignity of the court. In fact, it undermines the credibility of the judiciary. And that is the question that the courts will grapple with at a later stage, on whether Parliament did indeed act irrationally. But for now, Parliament has said Dr. Hlophe must sit out the meetings of the JSC in October and in April next year until all of these cases are resolved.
Okay, these cases, of course, no one really knows the timeline because it is pending a review of the National Assembly's decision. From your understanding of Mbekezeli, what is the supposed time frame for this to happen? Because it is an interdict, and one would think of it being a short-term judgment that is there. But from a long-term perspective, what is the time frame that could be expected should Dr. Hlophe not serve, well, not serve, but be completely taken out of any activities when it comes to judicial duties within the country?
Well, for now, we don't know the timelines, but what I can tell you is that the Constitutional Court has already set down the AfriForum case that deals with the same question. That case is already treated as urgent in the Constitutional Court, and so we will expect a hearing early next year. The Western Cape High Court obviously will wait until the Constitutional Court deals with the issue, and we can expect a judgment to be out in the first half of 2025. So by this time next year, we will have a final decision of whether Judge Hlophe, or Dr. Hlophe rather, should be a member of the JSC or not. So for now, we don't really have an exact timeline, but I predict that by this time next year, this issue will be resolved.
Does Dr. Hlophe have some sort of leg to stand on, even though all of these rulings and judgments are against it? Is there some sort of way that he could rescue himself or save himself to get back on the JSE, even if it is supposedly a 5% chance?
Well, look, the chances right now are hard to predict because today's judgment is an interim interdict. So it means temporarily, for now, he will not sit and participate in the JSC. But like I said, next year, these issues will come to court and the court will make a final decision. The Constitutional Court will make a final decision on whether Dr. Hlophe can be a member of the JSC or not. So for now, at least, we can say he has a 50% chance of being a member because we don't know whether the courts will say the DA is wrong, Parliament was right, or the courts will say Parliament was actually wrong and the DA is right, and so Dr. Hlophe should be disqualified. We don't know for now. So I can say there are about 50% chances of him becoming a member of the JSC.
Interesting to see how this is going to pan out. Mbekezeli, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. That's Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter. We're going to be, of course, keeping a close eye on the case right there involving Dr. John Hlophe. But for now, he is not allowed to sit in any of the Judicial Service Commission's selection of some of the brightest legal minds within this country. And after the break, I'm going to be speaking to Stats South Africa. They released its second quarter employment statistics. I speak to Matlapane Masupie from Stats SA with regards to that. Do stay tuned.